And we're back with us, Amaka, who is the inclusive language expert. Welcome. Great to have you with us here today.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Sandra and Łukasz. It's great to see you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
We started our conversation with two persons coming from Accenture and PepsiCo sharing their experience in introducing inclusive language in their organization. We talked about women representation in media, and I would like to go deeper in the topic of language. Both are connected more explicitly, implicitly to the language. Yet, can you tell us what is the right first step, or what are the first essential steps for the business when trying to introduce inclusive language?
So first of all, something that was already mentioned during today's conference many times. Why? So answering the question, why do you want to introduce inclusive language? Having a good understanding of your company's needs, and first of all, of the employees' needs. Also, who is represented, who needs more representation when it comes to actually being included, being made that they belong on the basis of language, but also communication. We have to remember that inclusive language also is about communicating acts. So not just about words we use, but actually the ways that we behave, the ways that we may sometimes interrupt a person or something like, or not let somebody speak and so on. So we actually have to have a good understanding why we want to introduce the inclusive language topic. This would be the first thing. And also to make this understanding available to everyone in the organization. So not just for the DEI team, not just for the leadership staff, but actually for all the employees, right? So this would be the first step. The second step is to actually creating awareness, something that Dorota from PepsiCo mentioned. So creating awareness among all the employees about the powerful way in which language can actually impact the safety and belonging of people, but it can also be exclusive on many levels, and that it's not just words, but it's actually a very, very powerful tool by which we not just describe reality, but we create the reality we work in. And I think that these would be the two steps. So having a good understanding, and then making this understanding of why language is so powerful be available to everyone in the company.
Well, incredible. Like, again, we're back to basics. Why? Simon Sinek was onto something when writing his book, Start with the Why. What resonated significantly with me from your first step was this broad understanding of language, right? It's not only what we're saying, but also our body language, visual language, so it's really complex. Keeping that complexity in mind, what major challenges do you see on the journey to introduce inclusive language in business?
So I would say actually, introducing inclusive language programs or trainings, be it educational programs or some kind of social programs that tackle on inclusive or exclusive language without this deep understanding of the goals that these actions may serve. So just like other areas of DEI, if we don't know why we are doing something, and if we don't know why we are participating in something, then we don't have motivation to participate in it. So for example, actually just, it can be even introductory meeting for everyone to know, or a newsletter or internal communication message to let people know that these things will be actually pursued in the organization. This would be one of the challenges that I often actually encounter when working with organizations, that people don't know why it has been introduced. They assume that it's because of the global kind of input and that somebody is imposing it on them. So I feel that if it's only coming from this kind of top-down perspective that we have to have this training, we have to tick it out, it's just for lip service, this is a huge challenge because for us as people, we all use language, we all communicate, and we all are in some way experts in communication, and everyone can get involved in a discussion about communication very quickly, and that people can also get discouraged if they don't know why organization is actually organizing or making them participate in certain activity. Another thing related to it is the existing myths about inclusive language that I usually speak about during my training sessions. One of them is about political correctness, that language, inclusive language, is only about words. So if we kind of, again, we don't dig deeper, we don't see language as a tip of the iceberg only, and underneath which we have unconscious biases, we have a lot of awareness and need of understanding why we are doing so. There might be prejudices, there might be favorisms, as so and so on, and this can lead to discrimination and so on. So there is a lot underneath language that also should be looked at. So if language is only looked at in separation to other areas of our functioning, our psychological functioning, social functioning, and social perceptions of the reality, then it will not serve. It will just not work because it will just be a very, kind of superficial guidelines and glossaries, as somebody already mentioned in the chat box, or some kind of trend or ideology that companies imposing, or maybe a global division is imposing on the local company, which also, sometimes I have the impression that employees, because of this kind of lack of this first phase of explanation why we are doing it, and kind of asking everyone
Amaka,
about
speaking
the
of
needs.
language, you're
Yeah.
literally unstoppable. I hope you know that.
Sorry about
She's
it.
passionate.
Don't be.
I'm so passionate
That's
about
passion.
what I'm
It's one of
doing.
those.
Yes.
I mean, I'm sure if there is one thing that all of us agree about during this conference is that language is super important. You cannot underestimate the power of language. So my question is, what you're describing, developing not only an inclusive language philosophy, but operational programs for that, it starts with diagnosing your team's needs. Is that correct? So it always starts with better understanding the different sensitivity areas in an organization. But what I want to ask you about is the risks that the organization and its leadership can be seen as oversensitive, paying too much disproportionate attention to these aspects, because some employees or many employees could potentially expect, well, going back to Milton Friedman, the business of business is business, and once you enter the territory of super sensitive tailoring the language to the needs of the organization. So I'm provoking you obviously a little here, teasing you slightly, but what would you say are the risks, and is in any way being oversensitive to it possible even? Or there is no such thing?
Oh, actually, oversensitivity, I don't feel that there is anything wrong with being sensitive, and also oversensitive
Sensitive,
toward
yes,
the...
of course.
Yes,
but there's a fine line,
but even...
right?
But even, like sensitivity, which is even, understood as kind of sometimes oversensitivity, is actually mistaken with being just mindful for maybe the minority when it comes to the statistics, to the consequences than the minorities in the company, but sometimes we don't know. So the people that are not represented in terms of the numbers, for instance, so being mindful to the consequences, so especially women of color, especially LGBTQI women, people with disabilities, people with neurodiversities, people of certain ages. So if we actually look at these some very often will not be actually little numbers. The consequences that those people have or experience when experiencing non-inclusive language, which is not just referring to them with wrong terms, because we usually don't need identity terms, and this is also a different thing. We don't need identity terms
Amaka,
unless we are
you've,
pursuing research or something
you've,
like that.
you've raised super important points, and even though we've run out of time, I really want to ask you this question from Katarzyna. What was first, language or the way of thinking and way of seeing the world? It's always a question, of course, but
Chicken
to make
and
the
egg.
language inclusive is somehow to change people's attitudes and their beliefs. What do you think about it, Amaka?
I think this has been a question for decades for the linguists, for people that deal with communication. What was first? Actually, I think it's both. It goes both ways. So the way we think shapes the way we speak, and the way we speak also
Exactly.
may shape the way we think and the way we treat people. So there is another step there, right? So also the way we think will shape the way we treat people.
And
But
that's a
this is
great
all interconnected.
and that's a great, powerful message to close this session with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amaka. It's great
Many
to see your
thanks.
passion for this topic.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you.